to represent a country. I'd like to
The DT department at Hayden School in northwest London is looking for ideas on how to cover sustainability, now a requirement at Key Stage 3 and 4.
Some brown. See how you've got the brown mixing in with the green here? That looks really lovely.
That's India.
All the schemes of work have recently been changed for the Key Stage 3 strategy. And even more change is a daunting prospect. In the outside world, sustainability has become a key part of any design brief. Kirsty Groves is a working designer with experience of schools. Could she come up with some simple ways of getting it into lessons?
We don't consider any sustainability at all in any of our schemes of work at the moment. We were aware of the fact that we should be doing it, but unfortunately we hadn't really had the time to start working on it yet. We needed to think about whether we were going to radically change everything, and we weren't really keen on that idea. We don't really want to have to redo all our schemes of work again.
Hayden is a large secondary in Pinner. Kirsty will be observing 3 DT lessons. What can she suggest without creating mountains of extra work?
You're going to do some batik. You're going to apply it to your piece of fabric, okay, based on what you've designed on your paper. Once you've done that, you're going to do some painting to paint the background.
Caroline Penny's Year 7 textiles project is the first to get Kirsty's attention.
Okay, just so it blends in a wee bit and it starts to be a few different colours. I think if you start to do a bit of brown and green in here like that, it'll look excellent. Okay, I think it's looking very nice.
The project, which runs over 8 weeks, involves students making educational mats for younger children.
Look, you want to get some colour on here, don't you? What sort of colour are you going to put behind the trees?
That's a bush.
Start to make it look a bit like bananas. Just draw onto it a wee bit, like a painting.
I can see in your lesson is there's loads of fun, and designing for young people is fun. Having something that's bold is fun, and if we can get a sustainable element in without losing that fun, and without you kind of going, oh God, I've got to do the sustainable bit. At the moment, how are their topics decided? How do they decide what they're going to be working on?
Well, previously, the last 2 groups, we had allowed them to choose their own themes and then made decisions themselves in their groups what they were going to do. We found by the end of the second rotation that everyone was doing similar things. So this time I actually selected some topics that were quite different from anything done before and basically let them draw them out of a hat or from a hand.
So actually, at this stage, we could bring in words to get them thinking around sustainable topics. Maybe there's even a kind of another level to it. So if you do say jungle, you could actually have start talking about an ecosystem, for example, within the jungle. Or if you have home, you could talk about getting them to think about the details behind it. Because I think that's where the sustainable angle can come in. And what's that over there? I can
it's
see.
a recycle bin.
Is it?
It's going to have it like...
What materials are you using for it?
I think we're going to use some plastic beads,
Cotton.
linen, and maybe some string for the jellyfish.
Where are you going to get the materials from?
Hopefully from the school.
One of the teams was talking about putting beads and things like that on it, which I thought was really nice. And maybe there's something around actually going and finding things that are not used anymore and finding uses for them in a way that doesn't look secondhand, making use of old things and then just making a point of the fact that that would have been thrown in the bin, but actually you're making it into something that people are going to enjoy.
I mean, one thing we actually started to use a little bit last time was some buttons, and so it could be a case that I start to get them to collect buttons from home and bring them in and use those.
And it's as simple as that, isn't it? It's actually, I think that's a really valuable lesson in itself, kind of turning the mindset from recycling is about old, horrible stuff into actually what can I use this for? and just starting to get them thinking about that. What I like about this is that they've got really big, bold colours on it. You've used, I don't know if you made a decision here, but you've used kind of the same colour in lots of different places, which is quite interesting because you don't have to use too many dyes, do you? Where do they come from? You just buy
They're just from the normal school suppliers.
Right.
Basically sold as boutique dyes.
Right. So it'd be interesting just to find out, because it may well be that some of them are actually quite harmless in terms of their impact on the environment. It might turn out that there's one or two that are quite bad, so maybe you could look for alternatives.
Next, Kirsty's off to observe a Year 8 food technology lesson on healthy biscuit bars.
Your group, you're going to look at the most aesthetically pleasing and rank in order. OK, so you want to get those images out and have a look at those.
NQT Fiona Johnson is getting the class to analyse different types of snack.
To the least healthiest, OK?
I think that would be the... So, we've got banana, Nutri-Grain. Yeah, that's what you want?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, Katie.
We decided that the burger would be the best function because it would fill you up most because it has the most ingredients in it.
Who had ranking by the most healthy? OK, Matthew?
The banana.
Banana's the most healthy. So when you're designing, think of the different criteria that you are trying to fulfil. And quite often, it will turn out that for function, a burger really fills you up, but maybe it's not particularly the most healthiest. So there's different criteria pulling you in one way and another to what you're actually going to produce at the end of the day. So always think of...
Kirsty suggests also looking at other criteria.
...fit for your target user.
For example, there's innocent drinks, which is all about completely healthy smoothie drinks, but also they have a policy around recycling and the way that they actually do their packaging. There's also Ben & Jerry's, which is ice cream, you know, which kids absolutely love. But Ben & Jerry's has a big scheme whereby they help kids in deprived areas to get jobs. So I'm just thinking the kind of the broader scheme of things to start bringing that thing at this stage.
You're going to be blind testing some snacks, some biscuit bars. Next one. So this is D. So what's your first impression of the appearance, the texture, then the flavour? Okay, so is it sweet? Is it sticky? Is it doughy? Think of all those descriptive words.
There's some other things around packaging. In the same way as you had the appeal in terms of taste, texture and appearance, you could possibly have something which is all around recycling of the packaging, and that could be your sustainability column. So it's just one added thing to just sow that seed so they can start to raise their awareness. Look at this. This is plastic and it's got lots of different colours on it, which is very difficult to recycle. This one is even worse because it's metal foil. And then on the outside, it's got like it's kind of plastic as well on the outside, so that's even worse. But what would you do if you were to make something more recyclable in terms of the packaging?
Don't have it all in separate packets. You know how you open this and they're all in different packets? You could just put them in one big one.
Lovely, yeah, absolutely, because you've got less packaging now, haven't you? They were very aware of how they could make the packaging more sustainable in terms of recycling. So I think that's a really nice area that we could be looking at, and maybe, maybe it's bringing other good examples of food packaging in as well.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think that's something that we can maybe draw on from this lesson when we're looking at the legal requirements of labelling, to also bring in the ideas of looking after the environment and how we can do the packaging and change existing packaging to become more environmentally friendly as well.
Finally, a Year 7 resistant materials lesson.
The weight on this side is greater than the weight on that side, so it sinks like a set of scales. OK, in front of you are some examples of clocks that the previous rotation of Year 7s has designed and made. What I'd like to do for starters is to work out what countries these clocks have been designed to represent.
That's the Hinduism.
That's Australia.
That'll be
That's Australia.
India. That's India. What's that? That's Australia.
And it has to be a France.
That's India.
That could be France. Yeah, cheese.
So we've chosen countries as a starting point or focus point for designing some clocks.
And I quite like the country thing in the clock, because there was, especially when you get sort of a mix of pupils from different kind of ethnic backgrounds, that there was quite a bit of discussion about the culture and that's, I find that quite strong. It would be nice to do something more with that.
Yeah, maybe there's something we can do around that in terms of what different countries do in terms of their recycling projects or initiatives, or maybe it's kind of, right, okay, you guys have chosen Germany, so as homework, go away and come back and give us some ideas around what they, some information around what they do. And what about the materials? Do you think that are they just the materials that you have available?
Yeah, the materials are available.
Yeah,
We use
because
acrylic.
it's all made of acrylic, yeah.
And do you know anything about acrylic? Have you done?
Yeah,
We started making key rings from acrylic. It snaps quite easily.
Oh, does it?
So you have to be very careful.
Yeah. So why do you think we're using acrylic? Is that?
It comes in lots of different colours.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper than like metal or... Yeah. It's quite easy to cut as well.
You do have to kind of raise questions about some of the materials we use and some of the uses.
Yeah.
It's quite important, obviously, to not waste materials. We do look into developing a cutting list that's going to reduce the amount of material they actually need, so
Right.
they're not
So
ordering.
you kind of tessellate objects,
Yes, that
for
sort of
example.
thing. Yeah, we do that, and then we'll.
And is that quite explicit to the students? Because
Yeah.
that, for me, is
Yeah.
a great example of how you can continually just raise their awareness around consumption of
Yeah,
materials.
absolutely. That, but probably after that point, it probably isn't referred back to much after that. You're going to need to. I'm going to need a volunteer from each group to just very briefly present your favourite design, what you consider to be the best design, and why.
The use of colour is good because they've got a blue background which works as sky and water. And then the taxi is the main bit of it, and it's bright yellow, so it really stands out.
So when you were getting them to analyse a good design for clocks, I noticed that you'd used a lot around colour and shape and representative, whether it's representative, and then obviously it tells the time, quite important. But maybe also there's something there in terms of a good design has elements of reusability or recyclability, or something whereby we've considered the impact of producing the clock at the end of the day, and actually maybe find some other products that are very good eco designs, and then what is it about them? So, for example, things that are easy to disassemble are really good, obviously, because when at the end of its life you can separate it up and then reuse or recycle.
Many of Kirsty's suggestions involve small adjustments. And by the end of the day, it's clear that getting sustainability into lessons doesn't have to mean adding a massive workload.
One of the interesting things is rather than have to come up with a whole new project based on something that's very sustainable, very environmentally friendly, very eco-friendly, that we can actually pick up on their knowledge very quickly just by what you said in our lessons. Because we've got projects that they're really interested in doing, and we want to keep the motivation up and their enthusiasm for design, but we don't want to lose it by suddenly having to bring in, you've got to design an eco-friendly house.
Right, yeah, because it's not all about brown bread and sandals. I think that's, for me, is the important bit. It's not about making kids think that they've got to go completely the other way and become uncool. And it's actually more about making the cool stuff actually better for the environment, because then eventually that will become very cool. And they're not thinking about, they're making those choices, but it's still really exciting and motivating. Yeah, I think that's really important.